Temos mais um participante internacional em nossa grade de conteúdo. Nós recebemos com muito prazer o CTO, Chief Trust Officer da Unisys, Tom Patterson. O Tom atua desde 2017 como um dos líderes do grupo de trabalho Moonshot de segurança cibernética do National Security Telecommunications Advisory Committee da Casa Branca e foi coautor do relatório Moonshot de segurança cibernética nacional. Então é com enorme prazer que o recebemos para a palestra A Segurança Falhou Conosco. Welcome, Tom. Thank you for being with us. Start your presentation, please.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that introduction, and I appreciate being welcomed back. This is now, I understand, the 11th year for this conference with the security leaders in Brazil, and I'm thrilled to be part of it. I'm thrilled to be welcomed back to Brazil, albeit electronically this year. But I am here with a message that I think is important from a global perspective that I look forward to sharing today with the audience. So with that, I will share my screen and we will begin. There we go. So again, I'm thrilled to be part of this event with you and bring with me a more of a outside Brazil perspective about some of the changes that are happening now in the world, both from a threat perspective, a business perspective, but also how security needs to operate. And the premise of this talk, to get people to think, is the premise that security has failed us. What we've built in a great security industry with wonderful people and good products and great companies that are implementing with wonderful and smart people, it still isn't enough to match what this decade is going to bring. And I just want to bring to you a broader perspective of what I see in my job and have that conversation with each of you. As you just heard from Angelo, my background is very diverse. I've spent almost all of my professional adult life in the security business over a long time. I've worked with governments around the world, and I've worked in the private sector. I've written books. I spend a lot of time talking to people on television. And the last 20 years or so, I've been very focused on an aspect of critical infrastructure called critical infrastructure protection, one aspect of security. And that's where you see some of these things like Snake and NSTAC and Moonshot, where we're really looking at holistic global efforts to try and address the situation that we're all faced with. So what I want to bring with me to you today is some of that different perspective. It's not about a product. It's not about a particular threat or a threat actor. It's really about a holistic way of looking at security that everyone can be aware of and everyone can take advantage of and leverage to their best effect. And so that's where we are this morning. I will start with this provocative statement that massive change is coming. And I mean massive. It's not incrementally better. It's not evolutionary in nature. It is revolutionary. Soon, adversaries of civilized society, of business, will have the ability to intercept and decrypt all of your messaging traffic. So how does your security today help you when that's possible? The ability to retrain artificial intelligence to work against civil society. This is happening. So you're starting to see just now the adoption of artificial intelligence and all the good that it can bring. There needs to be an equal effort on the security of that artificial intelligence, not only the programs and how they are written, but the training data, how they are taught what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong. That training of AI could be used against us. The ability to completely disrupt or take over communications countrywide or citywide or company-wide is absolutely coming with changes in technology that are about to be put in place. the ability to inject doubt into systems. Think about what systems you have that require certainty. You need to know exactly how much money is in your bank account, exactly how much. If it's 1 penny off, you then start to worry that it's completely off, or it could be. So if there is doubt in these systems that technology can now introduce, then there's going to be chaos in our systems unless we're able to defend. And finally, the ability to masquerade as anyone, anywhere is coming very soon. You've started to see already the deep fakes, the artificially created people, the people that can look somewhat like you and sound somewhat like you. That's going to be imperceptible in terms of differentials between the real you and an artificially created construct of you. So that ability to masquerade, that's going to change and tax the way we do identities. Right now, the foolproof thing is to see you. You know, see, I know what Tom looks like. It must be me. That is going to change. So with all this adversarial capability, all these technology changes that are happening that are going to introduce this new level of risk, my premise of our talk today is that yesterday's security that we've all relied on up until now cannot defend tomorrow's society. And that is an important point. If we just stay on the course we are on with securing our systems, with securing our companies, securing our countries, if we just stay with what we're currently doing, we will fail. So change is coming from our adversaries. Change must also come from each of you. Let's talk about what that means going forward. First off, on the threats. This is not a talk just to rehash all the threats. You're all cyber professionals. You read a lot of the same stories that I read. You talk to some of the same people. You know that there are countries that threaten companies around the world. There are transnational crime gangs or organized criminals that do the same. There's terrorists that pop up everywhere around the world that do the same. There's local crime that's become very sophisticated. I'm not here to talk to you about any one of these threat actors. But what I am here to point out is that in my career, especially over the last 10 or 15 years, very few cyber attacks of importance are done by just one of these groups. The vast majority of these attacks had these groups working together. Local criminal groups work with transnational criminal groups, sometimes funded by a country, or sometimes the country leads it and goes through and co-ops local criminals and puts it into terrorist hands. These are groups that are working against civilized society around the world. And therefore, it's clear that we, on the good guy side, no matter where we are in the planet, must work together much more closely to help defend against these threats. They are very real, and they are only going to get worse. And each of these groups is already focused on how to take advantage of new technological changes that are coming. And so it is important for all of us as security professionals to do the same. It's not just our computers that could be turned off. That's bad, but it's not the end of the world. But when our banking system for an entire country can be destabilized, or the food distribution network for an entire country can be shut off, or the power, the energy can be disrupted or rerouted. When these things that are now all computer controlled can be adjusted remotely, electronically, with cyber attacks due to the way we're leveraging technology for our services, we are at greater risk than the good old days when they could just turn off our computers. Brazil obviously saw this just in this past month with the election system hacks that have gone in. And there was the actual attacks, and then there was the question of what else might have been done. Do we have uncertainty in our voting system? This is a question not just in Brazil, but around the world today. So as these lifeline services rely on advanced technology, rely on using the internet and the connectivity that's there, our security must evolve to meet the threats. Let's look at critical infrastructure as a global issue. Everywhere in the world, they have elections. We're starting to see artificial intelligence being used to sway people, to change people's perception of how to vote, as well as destabilize the vote counts themselves. Everyone in the world has transportation. I've been to spend a lot of time in Sao Paulo. We certainly have a lot of transportation issues and networks there. 5G is going to affect that dramatically this decade. 5G communications is going to be a transportation issue because our cars, with all those little computers in them, are going to start to communicate with the other cars right on the same roads. And they're going to communicate with the infrastructure in the roads and with the governments that run the roads. And all that's going to come in real time in the next few years. And as that comes out, that will introduce brand new risks that need to be addressed holistically. Banking, another critical infrastructure. Everywhere in the world requires a financial system to keep their economy running. We're well beyond gold from the 1600s. We now have some sort of a ledger somewhere. Now it's in the cloud. It's all secured by encrypting the data. That's what we rely on in security, especially in the financial sector. We encrypt the data as it goes forward. Well, as we encrypt, we use global standards for encryption, or maybe we have some different variants in country by country, but it's essentially the same mathematical situation. What we're seeing is with the advent of general purpose quantum computers, countries will soon have the capability to decrypt the current level of encryption. So if we know that by the end of this decade, adversaries will be able to decrypt all of our banking information, how does that make our banking system secure going forward? We must start to look at quantum encryption, provable security, regardless of how fast the decryption system is. That's possible, but it's nascent. And finally, safe cities. We're seeing more and more use of cameras throughout cities to help secure the population, to help bring security, bring policing, bring safety to a wide variety of people in a very disparate groups. As we see that, the question of identity becomes very important. Privacy becomes very important. How we determine who it is and what they're saying and what they're doing. That is being built today. That's being built with artificial intelligence, but it's also trying brand new ways of determining identity. And so all of these critical infrastructure issues, all reliant on technology, all having threats that are aimed specifically at these areas, all that are what we call lifeline services, where the entire economy could crumble if these go down. The concept used to be called critical infrastructure protection, where we would protect that critical infrastructure. The newer concept is critical infrastructure resilience, where we may not be perfect. We may have a bank go down and be hacked, or we might have a car drive off the road. But resilience means that the network, that the system, that the country, that the infrastructure that we all rely on will bend but not break. That is a big change worldwide right now in the thinking, in the planning, at the government levels, at the think tank levels, at the CEO and boardrooms. They're all now switching their thinking to one of resilience, especially if what you work in is one of these lifeline services. Trust is the new direction around the world. It's no longer security that is the top of the pyramid, But it's really trust is what we're looking for. Does someone trust you? Does someone trust your service to use it? That's changing dramatically now. This was a talk I gave in Davos earlier this year when we could still travel. And the concept wasn't, tell me about this new security thing. The concept was, how are we supposed to trust each other, our countries, our companies, our products, our people? How is that trust going to work in this new age? And turns out if you focus on trust as the problem you're trying to solve and not perfect security, there's a lot of advantages you can have. You can actually figure out how to build trust, how to engender trust in the digital age if you focus on it. And I'm not just saying that because I'm the Unisys Chief Trust Officer, but I'm telling you that this is a thing around the world that companies and countries alike are switching their focus to and looking how to address. Resilience, I talked about in critical infrastructure resilience, but it's also replacing security as a corporate goal. You should no longer tell your chief security officer that they need to be perfect to keep their job or to do well. You should be able to have a system that understands that someone might click on the wrong thing one day or be fooled by a really good phishing link, or there might be a truly advanced attack that disrupts your networks. All that's fine, but it's important that that not take down your company. And that, again, it's a change. It starts in the boardrooms and then goes to the CEOs and the corporate leaders before that direction goes to the security teams. If the goal is resilience, how can we bend but not break? You can win that. You can actually build a system that is resilient as opposed to trying to build one that's always secure. I mentioned I was in Davos earlier this year with the World Economic Forum, where the talk for the past couple of years has been around what they call the Fourth Industrial Revolution, abbreviated to 4IR. The Fourth Industrial Revolution, whether we want it or not, is beginning to reshape our realities. All of these are new technologies, dramatically new technologies that are coming to Brazil, they're coming to your company, they're coming to the products and services that you use, they're coming to the entire world. The first one I want to talk to you about is 5G, or fifth generation wireless. I will tell you that 5G is a lot more than 4G plus 1. 5G is a new way of approaching communications, a vastly new way. One of the things that gets advertised is faster download speeds. Yes, it has that, so you can download your movie faster. But it also has peer-to-peer capabilities where your device and the person's device next to you will start to have its own conversation, whether you want it to or not. So looking at 5G as it's a 4IR component, but also you need to look at the security of 5G. It's vastly different. Artificial intelligence, again, it's coming to everywhere. It's coming to commerce. It's coming to social and entertainment, but it's also coming to our business world, and it's going to sneak in on you. So I really recommend a focus on understanding what your national policy is for artificial intelligence and adoption, how you have trusted use of AI, whether you rename it as augmented intelligence, as the White House has done, where you keep a person in the loop, or you just focus on the training data, which groups you're going to use. But AI is an important transformational technology that's coming. Whether you want it or not, it's coming to Brazil. So learn how to harness it, learn how to use it for good. AI for good is a global effort where people have started to work together to share information, especially on how to use AI for good. Advanced biometrics, we're well beyond the fingerprint. We have cameras everywhere. We also have 5G connecting billions of sensors all over the world that used to be separated, are now connected, or soon will be. And those sensors are going to start to report on you. They're going to look at you. They're going to listen to you. They're going to know how healthy you are, how fast you're going, and where you are, what you're doing. Unless you take control of those connected sensors, what we call behavioral biometrics, not just the fingerprints and the face print, but all your behaviors. What seat in the car do you sit in? Which one's safer? Which one's riskier? All those little things are going to be reported. And it's important that you, as security professionals, learn how to harness that, make sure it's being used for good and where you can maintain your privacy. And finally, there is the issue around quantum. There's not only quantum general purpose computers, but quantum encryption is in communications are new fields that are coming up with what's called provable encryption, where you can mathematically prove that that the message will stay secure, the data will stay secure. That's not the case with today's encryption. Today's encryption says, well, nobody could have that fast of a computer, so we're fine. They need new methods using photons to encrypt and to communicate. That's around the corner. That's this decade. But it's something that if you're in a lifeline service, you should absolutely be looking at. And finally, IoT or IT and OT are merging. This Internet of Things that we all talk about, and if you're in like an energy sector or banking sector, you have industrial control systems, sort of the same similar thing. These things are now connected through 5G to all the rest of our digital economy. So there's no separation. There's no what we used to call an air gap that used to protect them. So as these connect, we need to look at the security of that interconnection point to make sure it's being done right. And so there are new ways to think. And this is not a product. It's not a service that you buy. It's a way to think about security. And it's called Zero Trust. It's now in about every aspect of the world, the technology world. I just spoke to a group of the world's largest chip manufacturers yesterday. They talked about how they now have zero trust on the chip into their designs. You certainly hear about it at the company network level. All it really means is that your default position is I don't trust anything, no matter where it came from or what it looks like. And I make it prove itself before I act on it. You can trust me. That's great. I'm a nice guy, promise. I got people in Brazil that will vouch for me. But do you trust this image of me? Do you trust the pixels? Do you trust the email that purports to come from me or the packets that purport to come from me? You should not, by default, trust any of that electronic transmission. You should make it prove itself. And there are ways to do that if you think that way. And so thinking about security in a zero trust world is absolutely, this should be going on in every boardroom, should be certainly going on in every strategy room and security personnel, and look for ways to implement that in your organization. There's great standards that are out there now and other pieces of work where you can look and see how other groups have tried to implement zero trust in their organization. Definitely, it's the way to go. That way you're not fighting every fire and worried about every little thing happening in your organization. You should also stop buying security products and then bolting them onto your systems. You should be buying systems that have security really built in. I just this week saw another major system that was purchased for billions of dollars by a group, by a government, that said, oh, I guess we should have added cybersecurity to this. Let's bolt some on. That's not the way to do it anymore. You've got to build it in line. So when you look for a cloud provider, look for one that really has security first and foremost as they build your cloud system or your transition system. Same with workspace, same with sort of the future of work. Now that the pandemic has shifted all these things, look for those systems, buy them from companies that have the security embedded in, top level security that addresses this new decade that we've just begun, and get that built in. You're always going to be playing catch up if you try and add extra security things to an existing built and fielded system. So you want to, as you evolve, and you will be evolving with 5G and AI, there's so many benefits that you will be making that change this decade. Make sure you buy those systems with security and privacy and resilience in mind. I will tell you quickly that the last 3 or 4 years as I work as the Unisys Chief Trust Officer, where we build and operate a lot of the world's critical infrastructure. I've been lent out to the White House in the United States to help with a 10-year plan to make the internet safe and secure for critical infrastructure within 10 years. It's called the National Cyber Moonshot. You're welcome to take a look at it, or if you want to get a copy of our proposals and our reports, you're welcome to send an email there to that address, info@nationalcybermoonshot.com. But the premise is that it's more than just technology. It's understanding this technology is coming and we have an opportunity to harness it, but we also need to change people's behaviors. We need to increase cyber education from the users and the doers. We need to build trusted ecosystems so we know where our components are coming from. We need to do a much better job installing privacy into our networks and everything that we're building. And we need to have policies, whether they're national laws or social norms or cyber agreements, but we definitely need to have all that working together. And we will do that. So that's what the National Cyber Moonshot is about. I don't want to say that this is in lieu of the basics. You still must do the basics. You should be patching obsessively and segmenting all your networks religiously and plugging into threat intelligence and understanding that the government can be a very big help. You can automate all these things, which you are all professionals, you should be doing. I don't want to say that you should take your eye off that ball, but you should be also focused on what this decade is bringing us. So with that, I will close. I will thank you, and I will be absolutely happy to take any questions online or throughout the rest of this conference through email or Twitter or any of the social medias, LinkedIn, any of that. But I'd be happy to help you in any way that I can in sharing this information. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Congratulations. Strong hug for you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.